Oh, man. We get a little wellness check on everyone. I don't know if you guys are looking at the markets. My goodness. If you don't laugh, you cry. It's not super unexpected, I would say. I know we talked about yesterday that the next 2 weeks are going to get a little hairy, man, leading up to the negotiations with China. Trump is speaking today at 2. We'll talk about what he might be talking about. I'm gonna end the show before that happens, so we can go ahead and watch what's taking place there. I've got an idea on a couple of things he might mention based on some reports, some stuff we talked about yesterday coming to fruition again. Well, that's crazy. What about this? Some reports that Joe Rogan might be interviewing Saylor. Might have already actually happened. So there's some flight reports showing Saylor in Austin yesterday. Now, we don't know if that was for something else. It could have been for an interview with Joe Rogan. There's been a lot of people throughout the year that have thought that this might happen. If you look, though, as of today, say on Kalshi, another prediction market, they're talking about who will go on Joe Rogan this year. Well, Saylor's up 14% today. Earlier this year, people are really expecting it to happen. I would not at all be surprised if we do see Michael Saylor on Joe Rogan's podcast. That would obviously be an unforeseen catalyst in Q4. Did it happen? We will know soon enough, I'm sure. Okay. Well, let's talk about some of the stuff going on. What is Trump going to talk about today? Is it going to be bad for markets or be good for markets? I'll say this much. Call me crazy. I don't have a crystal ball. I actually think that he might say something that is positive today for markets. And here's my thought process. Generally speaking, when he says things that are bad for markets, he does that on a Friday after markets close. Okay. We've seen this time and time again. He didn't really give, with crypto, it's like we're 24/7. But for the stock market, generally he waits until a Friday when markets close. That gives him a couple days to smooth things over before markets open. The fact that he's talking today while markets are still live on a Thursday leads me to believe that we're probably going to get some positive news here. Okay. I think markets have been selling off today because of recency bias. What's happened the last few times he's had, come on, made a statement. It hasn't been good. Okay. I hope I'm right here, but that is my belief. Now, what are some things that could come up when he talks today? Number one, we have some updates on China. China said that we deliberately caused panic over the rare earth mineral thing. There's also reports that came out that said that they're open to trade talks with the U.S. So this is China's Ministry of Commerce said that its export restrictions aim to protect its national security by preventing the misuse of rare earth minerals in military applications. This goes along with some other reports that have come out that when it comes to civilian use and for chips, for technology, etc., they're going to have to sign off on it. But their main purpose here, their main goal is to basically cut off rare earth minerals for military purposes. In particular, and I covered this before, but the magnets are used for the F-35 warplane, Tomahawk cruise missiles, etc. Okay, so that would certainly be a good development. Okay, there were reports again that China Commerce Ministry said that the export controls will be approved for civilian use. So, all the concern over are they going to cut off, the rare earth minerals that were used for chip production? Is that going to crush the AI sector that's been really holding up the economy? It sounds like that probably won't be the case. So that would be a good development, and they are still planning to meet later this month. All right. The other thing, and I talked about this yesterday as a potential catalyst, is peace talks with Ukraine and Russia. And this actually was tweeted out by Trump today. We saw some of the signs there that could be coming. He talked to Putin today. He said, "I've just concluded my telephone conversation with Vladimir Putin of Russia. It was a productive one. I actually believe that the success in the Middle East, of course, the agreement that they just had with Israel and Hamas, could help in their negotiations." Says, "At the end of the conclusion, we agreed there would be, this is key, a meeting with our high-level advisors." So the first one's going to have Marco Rubio with some other people. Meeting location yet to be determined. He said then him and Putin will meet at an agreed upon location in Budapest, Hungary, to see if we can bring this inglorious war to an end. Trump's going to meet with Zelensky tomorrow in the Oval Office. So I would imagine that he will talk about this in his statement today. It would make sense. Granted, right after that, he did send out this tweet above that if Hamas is going to continue killing people in Gaza, which is not the deal, then we'll have to go in and kill them. So that's great. You don't like to see that. Anyway, I think that the Russia thing could certainly come. Now, this is after he made this statement yesterday about India. And of course, we talked about this. Russia's oil sales are really what's kept them in this war. As oil prices come down, if they can't sell to the likes of India and China, that's going to be part of the China negotiations, is not buying so much oil from Russia. That does really hinder Russia. And this is what he had to say yesterday about India buying Russian oil.
Great relationship. No, we were not happy with him buying oil from Russia because that lets Russia continue on with this ridiculous war where they've lost 1.5 million people, by the way. Russia's lost 1.5 million people, soldiers mostly. This is a war that should have never started, but it's a war that Russia should have won in the first week, and they're going into the 4th year. And I want to see it stop. So I was not happy that India was buying oil. And he assured me today that they will not be buying oil from Russia. That's a big stop.
So is that true? Did he really assure him of that? I mean, some reports came out yesterday, some conflicting reports following that statement, said that some Indian refiners are preparing to cut Russian oil imports with expectations of a gradual reduction. But Russia did say that there's confident that its energy partnership with India would continue. So this official statement came from India. Essentially, they're saying that they're going to do what's best for their country. Okay. Some people are taking this as, well, they didn't have a conversation. The way I read this is, they're not confirming nor denying, but I think it will be a gradual move regardless. Okay. If we look at oil prices today down to $57, man, that's crazy. Certainly good for inflation. Okay. Oil is very tied to inflation numbers. One of the things I was reading, though, about, if they, down again. One of the things I was reading, though, about this Russian oil situation, which I thought was actually kind of interesting. You're like, well, if they convince India and China to stop buying Russian oil, they're going to have to backstop that supply somewhere, and it's going to drive up oil prices. And Russia actually might not end up taking that big of a hit if oil prices go back up. So a lot of moving parts there, but I do believe Russia will be talked about today. That I think the market should react favorably to that. Seems that negotiations with China are maybe improving slightly based on what China's saying from their end. Maybe things were overblown. That would be good. The other thing that's being kicked around that he is expected to talk about today, very separate from anything we've covered, but there's been talks about IVF being covered. And it says that the effort from Trump here is that he wants to lower drug prices and make IVF treatment more affordable. This is something that is being reported that he's going to talk about today at 2:00. And just a couple of things on this. It's not necessarily tied to markets so much, but it is, interesting to cover. Talking about fertility rates, in the U.S., and we've talked about this before, and why robotics can be such a big thing. But obviously, it's been falling off a cliff. What's interesting, though, is that it's actually male sperm counts are about 50% less than they were 40 years ago. And it does talk about how, this in vitro has been around for 40 years now. It's the first baby that was born from in vitro. But to this point, a lot of the focus has been on females in infertility, whereas roughly half of infertility situations involve really the male is the problem, and something that we don't know why it's happening, but I do expect that today Trump, the reports are saying that he will be speaking about that. Now, something else that I think could be actually impacting markets that hasn't really been talked about too much is the regional banking crisis that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of regional banks down pretty heavily today. And in particular, there's a couple of banks here. Says regional shares of investment bank Jefferies tumbled on Thursday as fears mounted around some bad loans. There's a lot of other regional banks that saw some big drops today. Goes on to say in this article, and I think that this actually is hitting markets, and people are kind of focusing on the China situation. Says the bankruptcies of 2 auto industry related companies this year have raised concerns about loose lending practices, and really the private credit market's the problem here. Says that it's left both the banking industry and investors concerned about whether instances of loans gone wrong indicate a burgeoning crisis. Obviously, one of the things that is a concern with our banking system right now is that the amount of losses that our banks are sitting on is huge, guys. It's been a while since I've talked about this, and it's something that especially with what's going on with the regional banks today, I think we need to talk about. If you all remember, Silicon Valley Bank basically got bailed out. That's been a couple of years now, and of course they did that because they didn't want to panic. The big problem with our banks right now is that you deposit your money. They used to have a reserve requirement of 10% of that. Okay, so if you put $1,000 in, they have to hold $100 of that. Now during COVID, they reduced that to 0%. So what a lot of these banks did, they loaned out to commercial real estate. Our regional banks in particular have a lot of exposure to commercial real estate, and those assets, if you've been paying attention, are underwater, meaning that the loans they have out are larger than the properties are actually worth now. So if those people were to default on those, mortgages or on the debt for those commercial properties, if they sold them off, they would still owe more on that loan than the asset itself would cover. The other big problem, though, was that a lot of these held to maturity securities, a lot of these banks bought treasuries. Okay, because back before Powell raised rates very quickly, he basically promised the banks that he wouldn't do that. The problem is all these banks that bought these treasuries, as rates went up, that means that the bonds they're holding become less valuable on the books. So this is why between commercial real estate really and the bond market, our banks are sitting on absolutely massive losses. Now, as rate cuts happen, that does help a little bit in the treasury holdings for sure. But that's going to take time, obviously. And one thing in particular to pay attention to is this 2-year treasury yield. And you see it's like plummeting right now. This account does a really good job of explaining what's happening with this crisis. And again, I think we're going to see this a lot in the news in the coming days, given what we're seeing with the regional banks. But he says that regional banks are sliding again. It shows that the market is waking up to the underlying fragility in their balance sheets. So when the 2-year yield falls this fast, like I just showed, usually means investors are shifting from inflation risk to credit risk. So they're concerned about the bad loans out from these banks. Says that's bad news for smaller and mid-sized banks because they're heavily exposed to commercial real estate. That is true. More than our big banks. Our regional banks have a lot of commercial real estate exposure. It says carry a lot of low-yielding assets from zero-rate era. So again, they're holding treasuries, 30-year, longer-term treasuries from back when the Fed rate was near zero. As we've raised rates, now they're super underwater on those treasuries. Not good. And they have to fund themselves in a much tighter environment now that emergency facilities like the Fed's BTFP have expired. Says that they're getting squeezed from both sides. Deposit costs rising while loan demand is slowing. So people are taking out less loans. You look at the automobile industry, like people are not buying cars like they once were. Things are slowing down there. At the same time, regulators are pressuring them to tighten lending standards, especially around office loans that need to be refinanced in a weaker property market. Man, in the risk of deposit flight to higher yielding money market funds, you get a recipe for shrinking margins and rising credit concerns. And this is true. You look at money market funds, there's like over $7 trillion sitting in them. Most of them don't have the FDIC insurance, but they yield higher than the banks. So you've seen a lot of people pulling their money out of banks, putting it into money markets for better yields. And so they have people pulling money out. They don't have the funds to cover it. All the assets they're sitting are underwater, and they have all these losses they're sitting on. It's not a good situation for our banking system, and that's why all these banks, regional banks in particular, are down. A couple of them have kind of sparked this because they've had to write off some bad loans. and this is hitting the news now. All right. One other thing that I thought was interesting, we're moving on to crypto. One other potential risk that just came out of freaking nowhere. U.S. Venezuela military engagement, and I need to understand why this is happening. I don't know if it's our cozying up with Argentina or what's causing this, but 14% increase that we will have military engagement in the last 24 hours with Venezuela, and over a 50% chance now by the end of the year. So yeah, one more thing to worry about with markets. Obviously, in 20 minutes, we'll hear from Trump. Again, because of the timing of his announcement today, I expect he's going to say something he's going to try to push markets back up. In particular, how about some hopium, guys? It's not all negative. The whale that shorted the markets before the last announcement and made a ton of money is reportedly longing the market now leading up to this announcement. There are some mixed reports earlier, but the most recent ones are now saying that that whale is now long. So that's good. The other thing, some other hopium for you. Because this is the third time that Bitcoin has been negative halfway through October in the last 6 years, but all 6 times October ended up being a green month. Okay. So it's not the first time halfway through we've been red, but all of the other times over the last 6 years we have ended up green. So doesn't mean it's going to happen, but as we talked about yesterday, if you missed the show yesterday, I talked about all the things that are lining up for all this disruption, this volatility, all the negative sentiment to be turned around towards the end of this month into early November. And I still believe that holds true. Okay. Bitcoin doesn't know it today because it's down. It's okay. It's okay, guys. We're still holding at 108. The next couple of weeks, I'm not making any predictions. I think we're going to see a lot of volatility as China and Trump posture against each other leading up to negotiations. And you never know what Trump's going to tweet, guys. He could come out today, smooth things over with markets, and then an hour later tweet something crazy. Okay. That's just the unknown with him. And it's something we're going to have to get used to because we got it for another freaking 3.5 years, guys. Well, not quite 3.5, but for a while still. Ethereum's been holding up actually quite well today, down just 2.28%. Love to see that. We really do want to see Ethereum break out. I covered it yesterday. Russell 2000 hitting an all-time high. The correlation with Ethereum is pretty wild, guys. So that bodes well for Ethereum if that holds true. I would love to see Ethereum bounce back. I think, most big TA people, the ones that I trust at least, are saying that, we need to see Ethereum break up above 5,000 and hold for us to see a true alt season. Will we see that the catalyst come together and allow that to happen later on in Q4? I'm still remain bullish on Q4. Call me freaking crazy. After the next 2 weeks, I think that we could see things start to sort themselves out. Solana down to 188.70. Man, got beat down a little bit, guys. Still some major news around Solana, though. So DeFi Development Corp, of course, DFDV, bought another 86,307 SOL, now holding 2.19 million. So they continue to accumulate. Also, the first spot Solana ETF globally got launched in Hong Kong. That's actually really big news. So that allows Solana to get some access to the Asian markets. That's big stuff over there. There's some news. What about the digital asset treasuries as a whole? We're seeing a lot of them come back down to earth. And there's some statements that are being pushed around from Tom Lee with Bitmine. So about him calling the bubble bursting for the DAT market. So this is his actual full statement. I think you're going to see more and more people posting about this. It's been in the news a lot this morning. Says that he's talking about the success so far of digital asset treasuries. He said that doesn't mean the digital asset treasury companies as a broader asset class will prove successful, especially as more launch to hold different types of cryptocurrencies, including so-called altcoins such as Sam Altman's WorldCoin. Lee pointed out that many DATs are trading below their net asset value. So the MNAV, of course, is their total value over the net asset value, or the value of the assets they hold. Some of them are trading at a discount, says, or worth of their underlying holdings. So as an increasing number launched in the public market, if that's not already a bubble burst, how would that bubble burst? So again, the context here is that there are DATs that are trading at a negative MNAV. In other words, that their valuation is less than their actual assets they're holding. What I expect to see here is some acquisitions, guys. We're going to see the top DATs start to acquire the underperforming DATs. We're going to see some consolidation. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but if the premium is gone, once the spot ETFs launch, there's really no reason to hold DATs, in my opinion. Okay, I don't see where the premium comes into play unless they're staking, like Solana or something. But why not just buy the spot ETF once they're approved? I think the digital asset treasuries were kind of a stopgap until we had, spot ETFs approved. Now, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't move over to the spot ETFs. Of course, we need the government to be back up and running before they get approved. I expect that'll happen. Probably it could happen later this month. Everything could come together at the same time within the next 2 weeks, guys, and we could all of a sudden see people get really bullish on the timeline. It's funny how quickly things shift. One other story before we talk about a couple Deepen things. There are some reports around Sam Bankman-Fried and Ansem, who's been accurate, not always, but he's been pretty accurate in some calls. He thinks that Trump's going to pardon SBF. I don't know if you all saw, SBF came out within the last week or two talking about a lot of fraudulent things happening in the Democratic Party, calling people out, etc. We'll see what happens. That could just be him posturing to get on Trump's good side. Who knows? But I will say this much. Polymarket is taking notice a little bit. Odds of Sam Bankman-Fried being pardoned this year up 3%. So still very low likelihood. But I will say this much. Pay attention to his Twitter account, because Tyler with Unleashing Deepen sent me this. He's like, what's going on? Every once in a while, he'll send a tweet out from his account. And if that's any indication of what you should be paying attention to, well, this meme coin that was created 8 months ago, when Tyler sent that to me, I called him. I was like, dude, I'm going to freaking buy that meme coin. This thing shot up to almost $2.4 million. If we start to see an inkling, things trending towards SBF getting pardoned, I'm going to be aping the fuck into this meme coin, because you better believe this thing is going to rocket ship up to 20 million market cap, currently sitting at 254K. Okay. That would be 100X. I think that would absolutely happen, but you have to almost front run it. So I'm going to keep a close eye on, any reports that there might be a pardon coming, keeping a close eye on Polymarket, but that is certainly a call that I think you could make some serious money on if it does indeed happen and you get ahead of it. Okay. So that's something I'm paying attention to. Oh man. All right. Let's talk a couple Deepen things and then we will jet out for the day. Ooh, crypto bubble's looking disgusting. That is gross. That's the last month. But look at some of these 30, 50%. Zcash, of course. Man, that thing's been crushing it. You know what, guys? Actually, I'm going to pull this up. I brought this up yesterday. Forgot to bring his account up. Brandon is a guy, I talked about, a few people that do really good TA. This guy, you need to follow. Okay. This guy right here. I'm actually going to subscribe to his paid community, because he's the only guy I know that really called the top of the market earlier this year in January. He shorted it. I think he's made nearly $100 million this year. He called Aster. He called Zcash. Dude, he has been on top of all the calls, and it's not just hopium upside calls. He knows how to not only do really good TA, but look at the critical levels and reversals and trends and tie it to real world macro events. And I think that's a skill set that you can't really learn. He just has an innate ability to do it. And he's been, to be able to do this, I mean, he's been trading every day for 7 years. So There's a guy I recommend following because he does send out free updates as well. Okay. So he did call Zcash well before it really ran. So he's been a really good one to follow. Highly recommend it. One other one, Sistine Research. I brought them up before. They made some really good calls late last year. He did not call the top of the market, I'll say. But one thing that they've been on top of here is plays on platinum, gold, silver, precious metals. Man, he has killed it with his community on those. So I was a little bit salty because I originally paid for a lifetime subscription to his community, and then he like shifted over to Towns and then like kind of screwed over his early people, which is really annoying. But I think this is another one that I will look to resubscribe to because I think they bring enough value that it's worth it. All that said, back to the crypto bubbles. The Zcash got me off on that tangent. Guys, the markets are ugly right now. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if you're holding spot right now, I mean, what do you do? I personally, my sentiment is that things will turn around November and December. I think that a lot of this stuff will get sorted out. I laid that out yesterday and why, my thesis for that. There's people saying that the top of the market's been in. I'm not in that camp. But if you're holding spot, I think you just, for me, I'm just kind of holding. I rebalanced. I talked about yesterday a bit from some underperforming assets into better performing ones or ones that I'm more optimistic about in the short term. But otherwise, you're just kind of stuck right now. If you've got stable coins that you didn't deploy during the flash crash, then maybe you can start looking at some potential plays. I don't know why here we go. Favorites. Here we go. What are we looking at today? Not great in Deepen world, guys. We talked about it in the space earlier how Deepen's largely underperformed this year. I think a lot of that, the fundamentals of these projects that we talk about have been really, really good. So these projects are doing some big things, man, some really smart founders. The thing that's been missing is that retail has kind of largely been absent since earlier this year when everyone got wrecked. And there hasn't been an institutional flow of money that has been able to go into Solana, into some of these Deepen projects. I think the Solana spot ETFs changed that. I think the money that we're seeing roll into Deepen also should be a clear-cut sign that, like, hey, people are getting ready for a move here. They wouldn't be putting $32 million in a high mapper. They wouldn't be putting, another $5 million into 375 AI, $10 million into grass. I've got another one I'm about to talk about here. And I think Helium Deploy kind of illustrates this. Like, retail says Deepen's over. Reality, people are building, guys. High mappers. Maps are growing. GeoNet's demand is growing. Helium Mobile users are rising. Revenue's going up. Money's being raised. But, retail is not in the game right now. Another raise, though, today, just to piggyback off of that, Daylight. Okay, they're in the solar industry doing, deploying solar in a decentralized manner. $75 million. That's a huge freaking money raise, man. So we're seeing the money come in, right? I think things will follow, but it's been a frustrating year. There's no doubt about it. In one sector in particular, and I talk about it ad nauseum, is, we'll do an update on the robotics sector, but I think this is an important one. I think we're still early here, and I think we're ahead of the curve. Dylan Bain with Masari, you should also follow him. He's got some serious alpha that he releases. He talks about how still very few DePi, I guess that's what they say, physical AI, raises in crypto and robotic spaces in 2025. According to Masari, that's what they've seen so far. So, I mean, we haven't seen a ton of money come in yet. But I believe you look at what's happening in the Web 2 space, this is kind of similarly lining up to what we saw with AI in the Web 2 space and then what we saw, how it filtered into a lot of the narratives in crypto. I think we're seeing this in robotics outside of crypto, and I think it's coming, guys. I really do. One thing in particular with GeoNet, Grayscale has added it to Geode to digital assets they're considering for future investment. So that would be great to be under consideration here. GeoNet price 13.52 cents. Criminal as fuck, dude. Like when it got down to 10 cents the other day, and like so stupid. 12 now. Market conditions, man. This is a gift, in my opinion. GeoNet is such a solid project. Aoki doing Aoki things, man. I mean, it's down 10% today, but still holding strong. Really, look at over the last week. This, every other freaking chart you look at wicked down to like next to zero. It seemed like this thing was like, oh yeah, a little bit. Like, I hope you got in on this dip, and then they're like, we're not looking back. Strong, man. Fundamentally strong. Aoki's legit. Rover, what are they down today? They're holding steady today. We saw that flash crash. Hasn't really recovered. Not a lot of volume on this one. This is a sleeping giant. What they're doing, a multi-trillion-dollar AV, autonomous vehicle industry hinging on data. They're the only ones collecting this data set at the scale they're doing it with GeoNet, with a RTK precise location tied to it. It's such a unique data set, and it's going to be so valuable. And they have the team to execute. So these are all, to me, just hidden gems. But market conditions suck, man. There's no doubt about it. Like right now, we witnessed the biggest flash crash and the biggest liquidation event in the history of crypto. Deepen has just the fundamentals are continuing stronger. We just haven't seen. It's just underperformed the rest of the market. It's crazy stuff, but we've been sticking through it, man, and we're going to continue covering. I'm going to continue covering this stuff every day. I think it's important. I think it's just a matter of time. I wish I had a crystal ball so I could tell you guys exactly when, but I believe it is coming. That said, we got 5 minutes. I'm gonna cut out here so we can get ready to watch what Trump has to say. Will he shock markets in a positive or a negative way? We'll see. We will see. Markets are certainly having mixed feelings about it, to be expected after everything we've seen recently. Appreciate all of you guys. Make sure to like, reshare, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'm working on an Aoki video. Super excited about that. So that'll be out here in the next week or two. It's gonna be a doozy. It's gonna be a good one. All right, y'all. Peace.